Everyone's saying Claude's best coding model just got nerfed 70% overnight. The benchmarks cratered, the panic threads lit up, and the story wrote itself. They quietly made it dumber. I ran the test myself, and here's the twist. The model is fine. Something else is swapping it out from under you, and nothing on your screen tells you it happened. That 70% drop is real in the data, but it isn't a weaker Fable 5. It's a different, older model quietly answering in its place, while you pay Fable prices for the privilege. This is the exact kind of thing I built this channel to catch. Not the headline, the mechanism underneath it. So here's the plan. I'll show you the panic and why the numbers look damning. Then I'll run the prompts live and catch the swap on camera. I'll give the strongest defense of why this might actually be the responsible thing to do. And then the honest verdict, the one the headlines are missing. Let's get into it. Start with why everyone lost it. A widely shared coding benchmark ran the restored Fable 5 and, according to their numbers, TypeScript debugging fell from about 86 down to roughly 26. Refactoring dropped from 74 to 38. Even its resistance to making things up slipped. Treat those exact figures as reported, not gospel. But directionally, that's a model falling off a cliff. So the internet did what the internet does. Every AI forum filled with the same accusation. They shipped a quietly downgraded model and hoped nobody would run the tests. And I get the anger, because if that were true, it would be a real bait and switch. Fable 5 is the premium tier. It's priced at $10 per million tokens in, 50 out. Roughly double the older Opus model sitting right next to it in the picker. So the stakes are simple, and they're sharp. If you're paying the premium rate and quietly getting the cheaper model's work back, you're overpaying for a downgrade you never agreed to. That's the version of this story that goes viral. And the frustrating part is, it's half right. People correctly noticed they weren't getting Fable's usual quality. They just guessed wrong about why. Because a benchmark score is just an average of a lot of individual runs. And an average can crater for two completely different reasons. Either the thing you're testing got worse, or the thing you're testing barely got tested at all. Hold that second one in your head, because that's the whole story.
To understand the drop, you need the month that led up to it, because this model had a strange few weeks. Fable 5 launched, and fast. Then, security researchers reported a jailbreak, a specific way of prompting it that got the model to identify and walk through live software vulnerabilities. That's the kind of capability that makes governments nervous, and they moved. Export controls landed on the model, effective immediately, and because there was no clean way to enforce who could and couldn't use it in real time, access got suspended for basically everyone. For a stretch of days, the flagship model was simply gone. This is why, honestly, I'd parked this story earlier. It was news, but you couldn't run it. Then the controls lifted and the model came back. But it didn't come back alone. As a condition of switching it back on, a new safety classifier got bolted onto the front of it, a filter trained specifically to shut down that reported jailbreak. And by its own maker's account, it blocks that exact technique the overwhelming majority of the time. On its own terms, the guardrail works. Here's the catch, and it's the entire video. That classifier doesn't just block the jailbreak. When a prompt looks even faintly like offensive security work, it doesn't answer with Fable 5 at all. It silently hands the request to the older, safer Opus model instead. It fails over to a fallback. And the trigger is way broader than actual hacking. Because a huge amount of ordinary programming, auditing code, fixing a login flow, hunting a bug in a parser, looks, to a nervous filter, exactly like security work. So now go back to that benchmark. It's a coding benchmark. It's stuffed with debugging and code repair tasks, which means it's practically designed to trip this exact filter on nearly every question. That score didn't measure a weaker Fable 5. It measured how often Fable 5 never got asked.
Here's the mental model that makes this click, and it's bigger than one company. You think you're choosing a model. You pick Fable 5 from a menu, you see Fable 5 on your screen, you get billed at Fable 5 rates. But you're not talking to a model. You're talking to a router that sits in front of a model and decides, per request, whether you're actually allowed to reach it. Every prompt hits that gate first. The gate makes a judgment call. Does this look risky? If it says no, you get the real thing. If it says yes, even wrongly, your request gets quietly rerouted to a different, weaker model. Same chat box, same bill, a different brain answering. And the label on your screen never changes to tell you which one you actually got. That's the gap. Not that the model got worse. that the thing labeling your answer and the thing writing your answer have come apart. You're getting a truthful label on the menu and a different reality in the response, and there's no line on screen that reconciles them. The routing is invisible by default. That's not a Fable problem. That's the design almost every provider is quietly moving toward. So let me stop theorizing and actually catch it. I pinned my requests to Fable 5 explicitly in the call itself, and then I did one simple thing the panic threads didn't. I logged which model actually answered each one. Because every response comes back stamped with the model that really produced it. That field is the tell. Most people never look at it. First, a control. A plain, boring coding task. Refactor a function, handle an async edge case, nothing that smells like security. I send it, I get a clean, sharp answer back, and I check the stamp on the response. Model, Fable 5. Good. That's what I paid for, that's what answered. The premium model is alive and working exactly as advertised. Now I change almost nothing. Same kind of code, same difficulty, but I frame it as a security audit. Look at this login handler and find the vulnerabilities. This is completely normal work. Every developer does this every week. I send it, I get an answer. It looks fine at a glance. Then I check the stamp. Model, Opus 4.8. Not the model I asked for. Not the model I'm paying for. I never touched the model setting. It stayed pinned to Fable 5 the whole time. The router looked at the word vulnerabilities, decided this was risky, and quietly handed my request to the older model. No warning, nothing flagged on screen. If I hadn't logged the stamp, I'd have no idea I was talking to a different system. That's the silent reroute, reproduced on demand. And this is why the benchmark collapsed. It wasn't running Fable against hard problems and watching it fail. It was asking security-flavored coding questions, getting silently bumped to the fallback model, and, because the benchmark only credits the model it thinks it's testing, scoring those reroutes as zeros. Reportedly, only a quarter of its tasks even reached Fable 5 at all. The other 3/4 were a different model wearing Fable's name tag. So here's the workaround, and it's the most useful thing you'll take from this. Log the model field on every single response. It's right there in what comes back. If it doesn't say the model you asked for, you got rerouted, full stop. And if you keep tripping it, soften the framing. Ask it to improve the robustness of this input handling, instead of find the security holes, and watch the same request suddenly stay on the premium model. You shouldn't have to do this, but until the label tells you the truth, that stamp is the only honest signal you've got. Now let me argue against myself, because there's a genuinely strong defense here, and it deserves a fair hearing. Remember why this classifier exists. A real jailbreak got this model to produce working attacks on live software. That's not a hypothetical. When the choice is between a filter that's a little too twitchy and a model that can be talked into weaponizing vulnerabilities at scale, a router that fails toward the safer answer is not obviously the wrong call. Think about what fail-safe actually means here. When the filter isn't sure, it doesn't shut you out and it doesn't take the risk. It quietly gives you a slightly older, more locked-down model that still does the job for the vast majority of real requests. You usually still get a working answer. It's just not the top-tier one. As failure modes go, you got a competent answer from last quarter's model is a pretty soft landing compared to the alternative. And here's the part that really complicates the panic. A separate test, thousands of blind human preference votes, where people just picked the better answer without knowing which model wrote it, found the restored Fable roughly flat with before, and in some categories, actually a little better. If it had truly been gutted, blind testers would feel it. They mostly didn't. That tells you the model itself is intact. The disaster only shows up on benchmarks heavy with the exact tasks that trip the filter. So the honest steel man is this. The guardrail does its job. It blocks the dangerous thing almost every time, and most everyday users will never once notice the reroute. If you buy that, this isn't a scandal at all. It's a responsible company accepting a little collateral annoyance to keep a genuinely dangerous capability off the table. I think that argument is real. I just don't think it lets them off the hook. Here's why. Here's where I land, and it's neither of the loud takes. This isn't a nerf. The model wasn't weakened, and screaming that it was is just wrong. It fails the moment you actually check the stamp. But it's also not fine, because the problem was never the guardrail. Guardrails are reasonable. The problem is that they hid the guardrail from you. You cannot see which model answered you. That's the whole thing. Everything bad about this situation dissolves the instant they show you one line.
answered by the fallback model. That's it. You'd still get rerouted, the filter would still be twitchy, but you'd know. You could decide whether to rephrase, whether to wait, whether that answer is worth trusting for what you're doing. Instead, you get a premium label on a fallback answer and a bill that doesn't care about the difference. Reroute if you must, but tell me. And zoom out, because this is why the story actually matters past this one model. Silent routing is spreading everywhere. Providers are quietly putting routers in front of everything to save money, to manage load, to enforce safety, and deciding, per request, which model you really get while showing you one fixed name on the menu. The model you picked is becoming a suggestion. This is just the first time the gap got big enough and loud enough for everyone to see it happen.
So the thing to actually watch isn't whether one model is up or down this week. It's whether the label on your screen still matches the model behind it, across every provider you pay. My rule going forward? Trust the stamp, not the label. Log what actually answered. Because the moment routing goes invisible, the model name stops being a fact and starts being marketing. And that's the shift worth staying on top of, long after this particular panic burns out. If you want the honest operator read on what's actually happening in AI, the mechanism under the headline, tested, not guessed, subscribe. I run the thing myself and tell you what the panic threads got wrong. Fast recap. The 70% drop is real in the data, but it's not a weaker model. Most of those coding tasks never reached Fable 5 at all. A new safety filter rerouted them to the older Opus model, and the benchmark scored those swaps as zeros. I caught it live. Same pinned model, 2 prompts. The plain coding task got Fable 5. The one framed as a security audit got silently handed to Opus 4.8, and nothing on screen said so. The tell is the model stamp on every response. The workaround is to log it, and to soften security framing when you can. And the verdict? Not a nerf, not fine. The guardrail is defensible. Hiding it isn't. One honest line saying which model answered would fix the whole thing. And silent routing is coming to every provider. So the real skill now is trusting the stamp over the label. Check what actually answered you. Don't trust the name on the menu. Stay in the loop. See you in the next one.